Hi everyone, good morning. I hope you're able to hear me. So in the
Yes,
last
sir.
session, thank you. Yeah. So in the last session, we discussed about how we can access the storage and what we discussed. I think the different types of formats of the data that we discussed, like we have a semi-structured data, structured data, unstructured data, and different Avro files, ORC, Parquet files. So Parquet is much more important for us. Okay, so apart from the file storage, we're also going to have a database storage also. Database storage also we are going to have it. So relational databases, what relational databases are there in the Azure? I'm just going to walk you through. All these databases are fully managed by Microsoft itself. We are not going to install anything. We are not going to do any run and maintenance of those particular systems. Okay, so for Microsoft, from Microsoft, we have a Azure SQL databases. So there is a databases called Azure SQL databases. And this Azure SQL databases we're having in the PaaS, platform as a service. So we have a three different types of categories: IaaS services, we have a PaaS services, and SaaS services. So varieties of the services we're having. And this particular Azure SQL databases is going to come under the PaaS services, platform as a services. And creation of the database also, basically, we are not going to do in real time, but if you get a chance, you should be ready to do it. Okay, so what type of configuration we required and what size we required, that will be taken care by what we can say solution architects or data architects are going to take care about it. Depends on their inputs. We can create if you're not having administrators. Okay, so if you are having administrators, 99% is every company is going to have their own resources to set up the environment. They don't ask us to do it because we are a developers. We have a more control on the data processing, but not on the infrastructure. Okay, so if something goes wrong, that it leads much more cost. So to avoid it, they will be having specific administrators for resources. Okay, so this particular database will be used if you wanted to increase the more compute, you can increase. If you want to decrease the compute, you can decrease it. Okay, so in which cases we can use that? I have given some use cases here. For cloud native applications, people used to go for Azure SQL databases. And for web applications, many things you can use it. For running the business also you can use, it's all depends on the requirement. And so I just recently joined in one of the company, right? So they are using managed instance as a target. I don't like it basically. Storing the data into the database, I don't like it because that is a small project as they said accordingly. But I don't like personally. I don't like bringing data into the database as a target. For source, it's fine, but target, I always go with medallion architecture like silver, gold layers are there, right? So that will be the right data engineering project, I feel. Okay. So one of the person I just talked with him, I got to know like they're using a managed instance from the SQL server to store the data. From there, reporting team is taking the data. And in this particular case, we are going to have something is basically there is a repeated text is there. Okay. So when I'm preparing, it won't happen. So let me give in a different way to make you understand. When you create a Azure SQL server with with PaaS platform. So when you create a let me give a small diagram here so that you can understand. When you go for Azure, we are going to have a storage, right? Under the storage, we are going to have a two parts. One is storage account. We're going to have a storage account. So that is one. Another thing is we're going to have a Azure SQL database. So this part we already know it. Again, when it comes to here, you're having a blob account for general purpose, and we're having ADLS Gen 2. And when it comes to the SQL Server, we have a single database here. Mostly we are going to have a single databases and managed instance. Okay, and IaaS SQL Server also. Okay, so like this, we have a different databases. We are going to concentrate on this single database. Okay, so single database is having a capability like you can also go for pooling. Pool will be there, elastic pool. If you wanted to save the resources across the different databases, then you can go for elastic pool. While creating the database, I'll show you. I don't like managed instance to show practically because it is going to take longer time to set up. That is one thing. The cost is more for practicing. I don't recommend to go for this managed instance. So setting up all these things will be taken care by database administrators. We are not going to be responsible for that. But as a data engineer, by using Azure Data Factory, how we can get the data from here to here is important for us. How we can bring the data from this place into Azure Data Factory for doing your transformation, for doing a data ingestion, that is important for us. So in order to do this practice, you should know how we can create a single database at least. If you know that, then you can create a database. And while creating a database, I'll tell you how basically in one of my previous organization, I handled, we used the same Azure SQL Server, not a managed instance. As a data warehouse, we used it to keep the clean data for reporting team. There was only data factory, no data bricks it is. And we are ingesting the data. Okay, so we are ingesting data ingestion we are doing, and data transformation we have done with the stored procedure. Space. This is also a bad practice, but their their architect suggested that only that was implemented very long ago before this. I mean before famous of this Microsoft Fabric. Sorry, Databricks. Okay, so that time they just used data ingestion with ADF and stored procedures will be for transformation. That entire orchestration they are doing with the ADF only. Okay, so in that particular case, I got an opportunity to deal with the database. That database configuration I increased and I decreased from my side only because I was an individual developer for them. So in my last 8 years of experience, mostly I worked as an individual developer. Okay, so we have a team, but my own responsibilities will be, I used to have it. So in that particular case, I know why we need to increase the database size and why we need to decrease the database size. I'll walk you through that. So I'm just going to show you how we can create a Azure SQL database. And then we are going to talk about how we can.
Uh,
Yeah.
Bhaskar, what is the difference between you mentioned 3 points: storage account for SQL Server, managed instance, and IS services. What is managed instance?
I'll come to that. I'll come.
Yeah.
So let me complete first this one, then I'll come to your point.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm just there inside this portal, Azure portal. If I wanted to create a database, then you have to search for SQL databases. Let me hit on SQL databases. Plus create. Not here, somewhere you can find Azure SQL. Let me take Azure SQL. Yeah. So when you search for Azure SQL, then you can see all three together at one place. All three together, you can find in the single place Azure SQL. In Azure SQL, you can see single databases, managed instance, and virtual machines. So when we can go for this is best for modern cloud applications. For cloud applications, we can go for this, and even for data warehouse, we have used it. Okay, so if you want, let's say for example, I have a database in on-prem and I wanted to migrate this into the cloud. Then you need to have a database in the cloud, right? So I'm just going to bring this, I'm going to migrate this. So migrate means like you're loading, you're doing a transformation. You can do the data migration with ADF, or if it is a Azure SQL, if it is an on-prem SQL server, you can also use the migration tools. Microsoft providing the migration tools to migrate if it is a SQL server. If you have a Oracle, then it's not possible to use this migration tools. Then definitely you have to use the data factory only. Okay, so you're just bringing the data into the database. So this kind of approach, many processes are there, many projects are there. And other is managed instances. When we can go for is, I have a database in my on-prem. I wanted to lift and shift. I don't want to do any changes. Whatever is there here, the same thing I wanted to bring it. So in that case, people used to go for managed instance. So this is best for migrate to cloud with lift and shift. But if you go for here, this is not going to have a SQL Server agent. No agent here. No agent. Okay, so if you're aware of SQL Server, then you may come across it. Many features are not going to be available here is because that is not for that purpose. So if you need to have a if you need to have a one more thing is you cannot cross query from the multiple databases. Here it is going to be possible from DB1 and DB2. I can join. I mean, I can get the data from here. I can get the data from here by writing joins query. But when it comes to here, it's not possible to do it here.
Like link services?
Exactly. Link servers is not possible in SQL databases, whereas in a SQL managed instance, we have a feasibility. So simply we can say whatever is there in an on-prem, the same features I wanted to get, then you have to go for SQL managed instance. Okay, and that is the other way. And we have a IaaS SQL server also. IaaS SQL server is also going for lift and shift. Here, the difference between these two is this is not going to have a OS control. No control on the OS. No control. Okay, so no control on OS. But here you have a control on OS. You have a control on version of it. If you want to go for lower version of SQL Server, you can go for lower version. Here it is always going to be higher version. The latest version will be there. So here and here. But here you can have a lower version and you can execute or you can keep however you wanted to have it. So it's completely like your own mission. The only thing is you are taking an infrastructure from them. So in that case, you can go for SQL virtual machines. Okay, so these three different flavors are there for SQL.
And for the first one, SQL databases, they are going to take care of all those
Yes.
versions and everything.
Yes, here also, this place and this place, Microsoft itself is going to take care. But here, you have to upgrade if you wanted to upgrade your SQL servers. Okay, so this one also is for lift and shift. Let's say, for example, you have a version of SQL 2016. The 2016, you have to upgrade here if you go here or here. But when you go here, you can have a same version as it is without doing any changes. For some reason, they wanted to go for lift and shift to avoid issues in the production. So in that case, they recommended to go for here. And even this one also lift and shift, but with the latest version, it will go.
Okay.
But all this stuff will be taken care by database administrators. We are not going to be part of it. For understanding, I'm just saying, if at all, if you're attempting certification, it will be useful for you. And
the architecture informs
exactly,
the admin team that we need those.
exactly. Yes, that is true. Okay, so if I hit on here, you can have a single database elastic pool. Okay, so what is elastic pool? I'll give a brief idea about it. Let me hit on single database only as part of our sessions. So when you created a database, we need to have a database name. I'm just keeping the name of the database is source. You can give any naming standard. And I wanted to create a server. Okay, so separate server for showing for demo purpose. I'm going to take a one more new server here. So server is something like this. You are going to have inside the server. Okay, so server is required if you wanted to keep any database. So I have a database 1, database 2, database 3, and so on. So as many databases as required, I can keep in a single server. Okay, so without server, you cannot have the SQL Server databases. Not only this, even if you go for any database, any RDBMS tools, we required a server, appropriate server. If you're going for Oracle, then Oracle server is required to keep Oracle databases. In the same way, to keep your SQL servers, SQL databases, we need to have a SQL server. Okay, so server is no cost for the server. Only for database, they're going to be charged. So I'm just going to create a new server here. Let's see how we are going to create it. Let me hit on create. So it is asking server details here, server name. I'm just creating Bhaskar Mate 001. It's available. So server name it is taking, and at the same time, I told you we have to take the location also. From which location you wanted to take the server, that you have to specify here. So it is taking East US, but my nearest location is Central India. I'm just going to take a Central India. Within the same place, I'm going to keep my databases also. So wherever you are having a server, just keep your storage in the same place to reduce the cost. Let me take a Central India. Then you have to connect to the server. If you want to see the databases, what databases are there in the server, then you have to connect it. So that means at least one administrator is required. Without administrator, you cannot create a server. So that is what the authentication method I'm just specifying here. So depends on the requirement, they're going to set up it. So mostly they're going to use both SQL and Microsoft Entra, or some people they used to go for only Microsoft Entra. So that means what we can say previously it was used to it was called as a Azure Active Directory. Okay, so you can use your company email ID, and they're going to take care about it how to provide the access. But here I'm going to take the SQL authentication. In some companies, they will go for SQL authentication also, or some people will go for even both also. So whatever it is, they're going to give credentials to you. So they don't give the administrator credentials, right? They're going to give your credentials. What is your username and what is your password? It is going to be given. And then when the moment you log into the database, it will ask you to change the password. You have to change your password. If they give a SQL authentication. If they give a Microsoft Entra, then you don't need to give it. So your Outlook account password will be taken automatically. Now I'm just checking here a SQL authentication. Administrator is Bhaskar, and you just provide the password the way you're going to provide your password for your Outlook in the same way. So text, numbers, so password specifications you can follow, and let me hit on OK. So now server is created. Under this particular server, we have created server, right? Under this server, I wanted to keep this database. So that is fine. And you want to have a elastic pool. What is this elastic pool? If you are aware of it, PGs are there, right? Let's say, for example, paying guests, like, or we can also call it as a hostels. Okay, so they're going to provide a single room. Okay, and single room means that room is going to be specific to the person. Okay, so one person is going to be used for single room. Okay, so that means for single person, they're giving that kind of approaches they're having. And in some places, okay, so there is a shared room. So shared room means like this is going to be shared by multiple persons. Let's say, for example, there are 3 persons are there. So 3 persons are getting shared this, and here it is getting shared only 1 person. Okay, so that is what this elastic pool says. Elastic pool says if this person is not utilizing this particular room, let's say he's going to the job from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Just imagine he's not available. So the room will be shared by 2 persons only. In the night, the 2 persons are going to the job. Then that will be shared by only 1 person. So the resources will be utilized. The resources will be utilized without waste. But when you go for single database, what happens is if the person goes to office 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., then this room is not getting used. The resources are not being used. You're wasting the resources. Okay, so that kind of problem is there. So basically, most of the companies, they will use it and they will keep only single database. And some companies, smaller companies or startup companies, if they're providing any services, okay, so if they wanted to reduce the cost, then we can suggest to go for elastic pool to share the resources across the databases. If any of the database is idle for some time, then other databases are going to consume the resources. So in that case, database administrators will create a elastic pool. It's not much difficult. You're just going to say yes. And then you're going to give a elastic pool name. Okay, so you don't need to do anything. I'm just giving a difference if they ask what is elastic pool and what happens if there is no elastic pool, if they ask in the interview, you can just give a brief idea about it or brief explanation you can give because we're not a database developers. For database developers, it is 100% is required. So I'm not going to take you through this, how we can set up it. If you want, you can just say yes, then you have to specify the elastic pool name. You have to create a pool name. Okay. So do not go for this as we are doing a practice for data engineering. We don't need to do practice with that. And then the workload environment, we have a development and production. And Microsoft has brought this feature instead of specifying the resources from your side, then you can go for this also. But 99% as administrators, they're going to set up their own configuration. So by default, it is giving some suggestions. You can also go for that if you're not aware of it. So since we are doing for our own practice, I'm just taking a development. And then we have to specify the compute and storage. If you go for the default one, the cost is more. Okay, so you don't need to go for general. Okay, so there is a vCore. Basically, when you take the database, a single database or a database, if you take, so what happens is we are going to have it 2 purchasing models. Okay, so 2 purchasing models we are going to have. One is DTUs. So DTUs based purchasing model and vCore based purchasing model. So each purchasing model, again, we have a 3 flavors here. So basic is there here. Okay. And standard is there. And premium is there. Okay. So in my case, in my previous experience, I came across this standard for testing. For testing environment, I used the standard, and for production, I used premium. Okay, so depends on the size of the data, you can take a decision. We were having around more than 500 GB data we were having in the data warehouse, so we went for premium. And here we have a 250 GB data for testing. So more or less same kind of data we are having here. So we just kept only 250 GB around with the testing, with the standard we have kept it. So if they ask what kind of DTU based purchasing model you're using in your project, if they ask, then you can say DTUs based premium you're using, you can say that, or most of you are not going to have a control to see it if someone comes and talk about it, because this will be controlled by administrators. So why I got to know is I handled that particular database. So whenever I required, I increase the number of DTUs, and whenever I required to reduce the compute, then I reduce the compute. So for time being, you just keep in mind, we have two different types of purchasing models when you go for compute and storage. Let's hit on configure database. I'll show you here. Just observe, as I said, I have a DTUs based purchasing model and vCore based purchasing model. In DTUs based purchasing model, I have a basic for less demanding workloads. So basic will be used for POC projects and educational purpose. We don't use it for testing purpose. We don't use it for production purpose at all. Only for POCs and educational purpose, because this will be useful for others also, right? If the people getting educated, then only this there will be more chances to have more resources. So they are given basic for less demanding workloads and educational purpose.
And for development?
Yeah, I'm coming to that. And then we have a standard. So standard will be used for development as well as even for testing also you can use, because this is a budget friendly. Okay, so and even basic also we can use if you have a less volume of data. But if there is a more number of developers, I don't recommend to have a basic. But in my case, we come across standard for development as well as for testing. Okay, so because we are going to have a control. If we take a basic, what happens is here it is coming with the fixed number of DTUs. This basic is coming with fixed number of DTUs. How many DTUs are there here? 5 DTUs. So DTUs will be configured or measured the storage plus compute. Okay, so compute and storage is nothing but the DTUs. So full name of DTUs is database transfer unit. Database transfer units. Okay, so fixed number of DTUs we are going to have. We cannot increase the DTUs and we cannot decrease the DTUs. Okay, so when you're practicing, I recommend to go with only basic. If you go for others, then your cost will be more. So to avoid the cost, I always recommend to go with the basic. So even in my data factory explanation, I'm going to take only basic configuration. And we have a standard. If you go for standard, what happens is it is a budget friendly. What does it mean? So budget friendly means if you wanted to increase the compute, you can increase the compute. And if you wanted to decrease the compute, you can decrease it. So it is going to come with the minimum 10 DTUs. So min 10 DTUs are going to be there. If you go for basics, there is a fixed DTUs with 5. But here it comes with a minimum 10. So that is what it is. You cannot go for less than 10. And you can increase the number of DTUs whenever there is a more load. Basically, when I'm doing a testing, okay, so for testing development, I used only same environment only. So when I did any changes in the pipeline, I need to run the pipeline, right? So to run the pipeline, I have to increase this number of DTUs. Otherwise, it is not going to respond as we are having a more volume of data in my case. Okay, so once my development is completed, or after completion of it today, like I'm going to reduce before logging off. So that will be charged for that particular period of time. So that is what the budget friendly. So whenever you want, you can increase more DTUs, and whenever you require, you can decrease the number of DTUs. In the same way, we have a control on the storage also. So this is much more recommended for development as well as for testing also. So if I increase this number of DTUs, you can see the cost is going to be changed. You just observe it. Now it is having a S1. And if I go for 50, then it is a S2. I used to go for up to S4 and S6. Now S3 is having 100 DTUs. Now S4, 200 DTUs. See here, cost is changed. And if I go for 400, that is the S6. I went up to S6 for testing and development. Okay, so the cost is something like this. For estimated cost is per month. And once my work is done, then you can minimize it. So when you minimize it, the cost is going to be reduced. Your database will be in live, but is going to respond slowly. For testing only will be used for testers and developers. So you don't need to worry about it. But if it is a production, then you should not go for budget friendly. I always recommend to go with the premium. So there is a one more pricing tier that we are having here, that is premium, high availability and performance. We are going to have it. So we are using 1020 DTUs we are using, and let me show you here. This is 1000 DTUs and 1020 GB something. Yeah, 1024 complete size we are using, and here we are using a 1000 DTUs. So this is not going to change because the production will be accessed by customers. So that was the requirement. We kept it 1000 DTUs. The cost you can see here. Don't go for this practicing. Okay, so you will be charged like anything. If it is a company, is fine, but an individual do not practice with that. So in the same way, comparatively, DTU based vCore is going to be much more faster, and the cost is also is going to be more. And you know, like this standard is equivalent to almost the general purpose. So this is again budget friendly here. So we have a provisioned and serverless. By default, we are having a serverless, and we don't need to have a server to have the our databases. So it is going to have a cost like this, and we can increase the number of cores, how many cores you wanted to get, minimum cores and max cores you can specify here. So this is one type of cost it is. And you can go for hyperscale. So hyperscale is for highly scalable compute and storage. If you need much more performance, then you can go for this. But we don't go all this stuff, guys, at the time of working. First of all, you don't get a chance to see what configuration we have used in the database also, because we are not going to come into the portal. Okay, so if you're coming across it, then you can see. So in my case, it happened as I was individual developer, so they have given complete control on the portal. Okay, so I'm just taking a basic pricing tier to create a database. And redundancy, we already talked about it. The way the redundancy is going to be happen for file system, in the same way it is going to be happen here also. We have a LRS, ZRS, GRS, and geo zone redundant. Okay, so geo zone redundant also is there under the preview, but these are there, and we used geo redundant backup storage. So databases are going to be taken backup three times. The database will be copied in three different locations. Sorry, three different places. So you just feel that file is nothing but a database. So just feel and give a comparison. You can easily understand. Let's go to next. And for practicing, basically in the real time, the private endpoints will be used and someone will take care about it. Network administrators, network administrators set up it, and database administrators are going to use those network private endpoints. And here I'm just going to use public endpoint from our side. We need to allow Azure services when you're practicing with a data factory. When you're practicing with the data factory, what happens is, one minute. Yeah. So when you're practicing with the data factory, what happens here is you need to have a connectivity from the data factory to your SQL server. So then only data factory can read the data from the SQL server or can write the data into the SQL server. For that, we are saying allow Azure services and resources to access this server. You're creating some SQL server and database. I wanted to access it, then you have to switch on it. So then your ADF can interact with this database, or ADB can interact with the database, or any other Microsoft Azure services. Like even Fabric also is going to access only if you allow it. If you don't allow it, if you say no, then these services are not going to connect directly. And client IP address is required to, you need to whitelist your IP. So to whitelist your IP, I'm just going to switch on this. For practicing, I recommend to go for this in real time. Someone will take care about all this stuff, access related. So we don't need to know about it. So let me switch on this from our side for practicing. And rest of the all options, you just leave it as it is default. I'm just going to say review plus create and hit on create. So let it create. While creating, let's talk about this one. As I said, we have a vCore based purchasing model and DTU based purchasing model. And the DTU is going to come up with bundled compute and storage packages. You can just go through these points, you can understand. Okay, and we have a Azure SQL managed instance. Okay, so this one is not, do not do practice, so just go through this theoretical points. That is more enough for us. We don't need to create it because it takes more 8 hours to set up it. So that is dangerous. And another thing is the cost is more. For practicing and for educational purpose is not recommended for this. Okay, so it is near 100% of SQL Server feature compatibility. And I mean, whatever is there in on-premise, you can see the same kind of things. There is a cross database queries is possible. And Azure managed instance features, not in Azure SQL database. So recommended for migrating on-prem SQL Server to Azure. I mean to lift and shift if they're going. And database mail is there, built-in SQL Server agent is there, native virtual network support is there. So jobs we can create as part of this. But when you go for single database, we are not going to have it. Okay, so that is a difference that you can see. Like if it is a Azure SQL database, then I'll show you the difference because managed instance, how your on-prem SQL server is there in the similar way, it is going to be there. And we have a Azure database for MySQL also. Okay, so MySQL also we can create from the Azure. So they have given it here. And but we are going to see as part of our project, we are going to see how we can read the data from MySQL also as part of the project. Okay, so but if you want to just have a look on how we can do setup in the Azure also. But I just wanted to say MySQL flavor also is available as a managed service from the Microsoft. Okay. So use cases, I've given some use cases where people used to go with MySQL. Basically, MySQL is an open source, but when it comes to the Microsoft, when you take it from the Microsoft, then you have to pay. It's not 100% free. And also PostgreSQL also is available in the Microsoft Azure platform. So you can also take resources. Basically, this PostgreSQL will be used for data warehouse. If you have a massive volume of data, then people used to go for this. And this PostgreSQL is having as a managed instance as part of your Azure. So fully managed and 99% is available. And choose single zone or zone redundant high availability. You can choose redundant. We already talked about it. So automatic updates and backups will be taken. So you can just have a look on this if you wanted to see. Here we are not going to work with the PostgreSQL. If they are using PostgreSQL as a target, then how we can use with the data factories matters. But if you know one database, then working with other database is not much difficult. It is very much similar. Okay, so is that created? Let me check. Yeah. Now SQL Server is created. Let me hit and go to resource. So server name is available here. Elastic pool, no elastic pool. Pricing tier is the basic. Location is the Central India resource group. So it is going to give appropriate details here. And if you want to connect this from the outside, I mean to say from Microsoft, from client tool. So one of the client tool to connect is Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. And we are going to see how we can set up it very soon. Let me hit on connect. I have already recorded session how we can install on-prem SQL Server and SQL Server Management Studio setup. I'll share that. You can just follow it and set it up. I'm just going to provide my server name here. I'm connecting to server type is database and server name. I'm just giving whatever the server name I have. And authentication to go inside this server. So authentication type is not a Windows authentication. It is a SQL authentication we set up, right? So if it is a Microsoft Entra multi-factor authentication, then you can go for MFA. And I'm just going to use SQL authentication as we have set up with SQL authentication. Bhaskar and provide the password and hit on connect. Now you can see the difference here. This is an on-prem database and this is a cloud database. And cloud database is always going to have a database.windows.net. Server name.database.windows.net. If I expand this cloud server, you can see there are three options only. If you go for this one, you can see there are major changes here. Okay, so databases is there, security is there, and integration catalog is there, but server objects are not available. Replication is not available. High availability is not available. Management is not available. And server agent is not available. Profile is not available. So all this same kind of features, if you wanted to get it, then you have to go for managed instance. Okay, so we don't need to go for that. Basically, as a developer, as a data engineer, what you need to know about is how we can interact with the database, how we can connect to the database. Okay, so how we can create the objects in the database. So objects means how we can create a tables. So tables creation also is required because you may not create a tables for data, but you are going to create a tables for metadata. So there is a metadata driven pipelines we're going to create it. So it is very, very important that shows how much experience you're having. Okay, so everyone create a pipeline to move the data from one place to other place. But creating a pipeline with metadata is very important. So how exactly we can do it is we have to control from outside. So to control from outside, then definitely we need to know about how we can create a tables, to create a metadata tables. Apart from that, we are going to create a delta tables. So that is important. Not creation of the metadata tables. My concentration is majorly on how we can create a delta tables in the Databricks. So because of that reason, I'm just taking you through the data definition language. There are a few different types of languages are there as part of the structure query language to interact with the database. Because database can understand only SQL. Database can understand SQL. Here I'm taking you through at very higher level, but we're going to have a separate SQL sessions. There I'm going to talk about what do you mean by create, what do you mean by alter, how we can write the statements. So SQL statements I'm going to take you through. But here for at higher level, I'm just going to say data definition language will be used to create objects, will be used to modify the existed objects, and will be used to remove the objects. And if you wanted to feed the data into the objects, then or into the tables, because we are going to create a tables here in SQL, then we are going to use insert, update, and delete statements to interact with or to manipulate the data. We are going to use these three statements, that is DML statements. And for TCL, for transaction control, we are going to use commit, rollback, and save point. And again, we are not a database developers or SQL developers, so we can ignore it. But I'm just saying here, if you wanted to control it, we can use the commit and rollback transaction. So this two I'm going to take you through as part of our SQL sessions. Let's go to the next one. So I just gave the commands, whatever I have given there, the same thing is available here also. There is no much more differences. And I faced one question, how we can grant the access in the Databricks. So Databricks, we are going to have a databases. Okay, so we used to call them as a schemas there. And how we can provide the access, our Unity catalog is there. We are going to come across it. So in that particular case, how we can provide the access, what commands we are going to use, that was the question. So grant command will be used to grant the access to the users in the development. And if any of the person left the company, then we can revoke the access. So the way we are going to give the access in the database in SQL servers in the similar way, we're also going to give the access at the Databricks level also. So Databricks is having a UI also. By using the UI without writing a code, we can provide the access. And by writing the command also, we can give the access. Again, this will be handled by someone else from the team, not by us. And then there is a very, very important thing, that is data querying language. This part is very, very important. If you say, I don't know the data control language, no one fail, because this will be taken care by some known people. And DML also, everyone is going to be aware of it, DML, so we don't need to worry about it. And DDL depends on the size of the experience you can work on it, but most of the people are going to be aware when they're working with the database or when they're learning with the database. But if you say I don't know DQL, then you're not eligible for data engineering. So that much important it is. When the data source is a database, then 100% you're going to write a select statement only. So without writing select statement, we never pull the data. So data factory is having a feasibility. Without writing a code, you can bring the data. But as a experienced professional experienced person, then definitely you have to write a SQL statement. So because of that reason, if you go for data engineering interviews, they're going to ask about the SQL. So that is one reason. Another reason is, as part of the Databricks also, we can write a SQL code. So SQL is very, very important. I just gave here a flowchart here. DDL is having create, alter, truncate, and drop. And in DCL, we have a grant, revoke. And DML, insert, update, delete. And TCL, transaction control language, we have a commit, rollback, and save point. Under the DQL, we have a select. Whatever I have given there, that I just presented in the flowchart. Okay, so we are going to spend the time more and more with this part. Okay, so this one and this one and this one is not required basically, but you just have a look on it. But this three will be also we are going to cover as part of our SQL regular sessions. Okay, so as part of this DP900, this is much more enough. And the execution of writing your select statement. How exactly you're going to write the select statement? Order of writing and the order of execution, I'm just specified here. So this is also is an interview question, as well as even in the certification also, there is more chances to have it. So order of writing is, you have to write select first. We are going to spend the time, you don't worry about it. Each piece we are going to spend time, and group by, and where is available here. So I used to say select, then from, you're going to write from, and then where, then group by, then having, and then order by. Okay, so this is what we are going to write. We are going to spend the time. You may not remember right away, right now, but basically once we touch this practically each and every piece, then definitely I'm sure you remember it. And the order of the execution is going to be happen. First from will be executed, join, where, group by, having, then select, distinct, order by, top. So they will give some statement and they will ask you what is the execution order and what is the writing order. There is a chances to ask. Okay, so if whatever you remember, you just give it. From first will be executed. From where you need to bring the data. If there is a join will be executed. Otherwise, the where will be executed. Or group by. After group by only, you are going to having will be executed. After execution of all of them, then select what columns you need to select, that is going to be executed. So like this, the order of the execution I just specified, just go through this. And we talked about it, right? So if you wanted to, the main intention is data analytics is going to do is to transform your raw data into business intelligence. So that means the business users are always going to expect the reports. And that is our responsibility to provide the data to the people, and how data is going to be transformed from one place to other place, that I have just given here some points. So these are all theoretical points. We already discussed about this, how data is going to flow in the traditional approach. This is a traditional approach. Okay. So this traditional approach was not in a position to provide the solution for your big data. So because of that reason, we got this new technologies or new services to provide a solution for the big data. So first of all, how do you know that is a big data? I've just given some characteristics here for big data. So people say big data means large data. So that is true, but there are many other definitions also is there. So if you ask me, if your system is not capable enough to process the data, I have some data here. Let's say, for example, I have a 500 GB data is required to store in my system, but my system is having 250 GB capacity. Then for my system, this data is a big data because my system is not capable enough to store this 500 GB. Or I have some software. Let's say I have a SSIS. Okay, so I just wanted to process the data. So my system is taking longer time to process the data. Then in that case also, for this SSIS, my data is a big data. I have a unstructured data. My SSIS will not support to process unstructured data. So unstructured data is a big data for this particular system. So they have given, market has given a few characteristic to say it is a big data or not. So volume, if you have a massive volume of data, then we can say it is a big data. So massive volume of data, if you have, then we can say it is a big data. So huge amount of data is known as a massive volume of data. Like you can see that massive volume of data in the social media, IoT, sensor data, and financial transactions. If you have, then there will be massive volume of data. And velocity. Velocity is also is one of the characteristics for the big data. So fast data generation and fast data processing. Data also is getting fast, and we have to process the data also fast. How fast the data is getting generated and how fast you're processing the data is going to define your velocity. If you go with SSIS, it will take days to process the data. Okay, so if you go for Hadoop, then it takes less time to process the data. If you take a Spark, it takes very much less than your Hadoop is going to take it. Okay, so like we are going to have a streaming data, stock market transactions, real-time analytics. So these are all going to generate very huge volume of data. So they're going to generate very fast. And varieties also is one of the characteristics. Variety of the data we are having. Like we already come across these varieties of the data. We have seen structured data, how structured data is going to be there, how semi-structured data will be there, how unstructured data will be there. So if your business data is having varieties of the data, then we can say it is a big data. If any one of them is satisfied, then your data is a big data. So example I have given, we already seen text data, images, videos, logs, emails. All these things are varieties of the data. And veracity also is one more characteristics of your big data. So that means data accuracy. You're doing a processing and you're getting some output. Okay, so you're taking some input and you're getting output after doing process. But how accuracy it is. Okay, so that is also is very important. How accuracy is very important. So correctness, accuracy means correct. Correctness is very important. So if it is giving wrong result, then there is no use of this. So veracity also is important for providing. So data accuracy and truth, trustworthiness. So data cleansing, removing duplicates, filtering fake news, something. I'm just giving some example for that. So removing duplicates is a veracity. And data cleansing is a veracity. And value, insights gained from the big data. What insights you gain from that? So all these are the big data characteristics, but in the interview, you can just talk about volume, velocity, velocity and variety. This two enough, and you can also give a veracity about it. So data accuracy also, you can talk about it. Okay, so I have given a data warehouse examples. Previously, people used to go for data warehouses like Teradata was famous, and I work for Netizer from IBM. This product is from IBM. This also was used for a data warehouse. So you'll be having petabytes of the storage and compute, depends on your requirement. You can have it, and even Azure Synapse Analytics also we have a Azure data warehouse. From Amazon we have a Redshift. Okay, so this will be used for data warehouses. For big data, basically, like those systems are not capable enough to store data, right? So people used to go for data lake. So that means ADLS. You can have a massive volume of data. And we have many places, many people are providing the ADLS kind of storage, that is a data lake storage. Amazon S3 is a data lake. Google Cloud Storage is a data lake. From Microsoft, we have a Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2 is a data lake. So that means you don't need to worry about the fixed schema. You can just dump it, whatever you have. It's like a lake. So lake can take anything. You can just dump whatever you want. But data warehouse is not like that. So basically data warehouse is going to have a structured data. It is going to be bounded to the structure. So this is optimized for analytics, and we are going to have a star schema architecture. The same feature now we can get in a delta lake. Delta lake is different. Data lake is different. Don't get a confusion. Delta lake is different. Data lake is different. Data lake is a purely file system. And delta lake, how your data warehouse behaves in the similar way, this delta lake is going to behave. So that was the feature. Because of that reason, people are more looking towards to the Databricks. So I've given what is the star schema. Somewhere I have explained in the previous example. Somewhere you can find definitely. And Snowflake schema is going to be something like this. Okay, so this is a star schema, not a Snowflake schema, because dimensional modeling it is we are having. And Snowflake, any of the dimension is having indirect relationship, then we can say it is a Snowflake schema extension. You don't need to worry about it because you're not going to be part of this. We are going to be part of to feed the data into this place. But we are going to handle the goal layer as part of our data engineering process. So in the goal layer, I'll talk about how this schemas will be there, a little more details so that you can understand. And SQL query support will be provided by the data warehouses. But when you go for here, then it is not going to be there. I need 5 more minutes, guys. So Azure Data Factory is going to be used to provide the solution for your big data. Okay, we are going to start talking about this from the Monday. It is very, very, very important. Okay, so many openings are going to come with the Fabric, guys. Keep in mind. Okay, so you can see the difference once we complete the training. By completion of the training, we can see the more and more openings. So we are going to spend the time with the data factory. So this is a fully managed service. We don't need to have a server, that everything will be controlled by Microsoft itself. So which will be used to implement ETL and ELT data ingestion. And we have a Azure Synapse Analytics. This is going to be deprecated. So you can just ignore this one, getting update with that. But I just wanted to say it is going to have a end-to-end analytics solution. We will be having data integration, a data warehouse, and data analytics we are going to have as part of this. But the same features they brought into the Fabric. So since the Fabric is came into picture, you can just ignore it. Even if you don't know Azure Synapse Analytics, no one will bother about it because it is a failed piece. It's not much succeeded in the market. Because of that reason, they came up with the Fabric. So at the time of Fabric, I'll give a why it was failed. I'll give a details about it. And then Power BI is also is there. This is also is one of the service for data processing or data analysis. And this will be used to provide the information. So reporting will be created. Business users can understand reporting at the end of the time. So a report team or Power BI developers are going to take the data from our side. And Apache Hadoop, this will be just higher level I'm giving, guys. Okay, so do not think that it is completed. Just basics it is. For DP 900 is a basic only. Okay. But we are going to talk about Apache Spark, but Hadoop is not going to be part of us. Apache Spark, we are going to see Databricks, we are going to see practically and theoretically everything we are going to see as part of this. Okay, so created data sets with varieties of the data. So we can run this Hadoop with commodity softwares and attached large storage. We are going to have a storage called HDFS as a primary storage, Hadoop distributed file system. And in order to provide the solution for your big data, they came up with the map reduce so that you can write it with the Java, Python, map reduce. Previously, very starting of early age of your Hadoop, there was only Java. Later, the Python was also added. Okay, so this was an older traditional service. It is to avoid this one. Apache Spark was introduced, and it is a open source distributed computing framework. It is provided, and it is not having a storage. It is only processing framework. No storage is available. So this Apache Spark can use the Hadoop distributed file system to store the data, or ADLS can be used to store the data, or S3 bucket will be used to store the data or to read the data. And Apache Spark is a in-memory computing processing engine. We are going to spend the time with Apache Spark at the time of Databricks. And Databricks is created on top of this Apache Spark. The persons who developed this Apache Spark is the owners of this Databricks. We'll spend some time at the time of Databricks, but here I just wanted to say to provide the solution for your big data, we have a varieties of the services in the market, like Databricks and Apache Spark. So when you go for interview, I'm sure they're going to ask, do you have experience with Apache Spark? Or do you have experience with PySpark? At least they will ask about the PySpark. And when they're asking about the PySpark, then definitely keep in mind that is the Apache Spark or Databricks. So both are going to be there. And Azure HD Insight from the Microsoft for Hadoop, it was the alternative solution for Hadoop from the Microsoft, that is HD Insight. Managed Apache Hadoop Azure service, processing big data with Hadoop and Spark. You can use the PySpark solution also as part of this. And Azure Data, this is out of the boundary. We are not going to touch this because we are not a Hadoop developers. And Azure Databricks is basically Databricks is a separate company, was associated with Microsoft, or Microsoft associated with the Databricks. Okay, so there is a dependency from the Microsoft. They depended on the Databricks to provide the solution. They depended on the Databricks. So storage is from the Microsoft Azure, and processing from the Databricks. So since they both combined together, they named it as a Azure Databricks. We are going to see as part of our training. And Azure Synapse Analytics is again they associated with Apache Spark. Apache Spark is a free open source. Everyone can take it. Okay, so they are dependent on like what I can say. They try to bring all the unified solution, but unified solution there are some limitations are there cost wise and performance wise. So because of that reason, they came up with the Fabric, and we have seen already Data Factory. I just taken here again to run the pipelines. We can use this Azure Data Factory to integrate your Azure HD Insight and Azure Databricks. This is important. We are going to use the Azure Databricks with the Azure Data Factory also. We'll see that. And basically, Microsoft follows this MPP architecture, like distributed mechanism, distributed node. So what is the cluster and how the cluster is going to work? We are going to see as part of our Spark. So more in detail at the time of Spark, we are going to see about the how cluster is going to be there. So this is one of the entry question when you submit a Spark job. When you submit the Spark job, how it is going to be started execution, and can you explain about the components of the cluster? So this kind of questions there is a chances to face, but here it's not the right time to talk about it. But here we have a control node. So control node is also known as a driver node in the Spark. Okay, so what is a driver node? We'll talk about it, and worker nodes is nothing but your compute nodes. So the similar MPP architecture parallelly, instead of if you have some work, instead of giving this work to one person, I have some work, you're asking a person to work it, a single person. Then you just imagine it is taking 5 days to complete it. The same work, if we can give it to 5 persons, if you give it to 5 persons, then it will be completed in 1 day. So that is what the MPP architecture. Your parallelly work is going to be done. So parallelly, this work is going to be coordinated with the help of control node or driver node. So no one will understand if you say control node or compute node, guys, when you go for interview, because this is specific to Microsoft. People may not be aware of this MPP naming standard in the Microsoft Azure, but people are much more aware of with the Spark, because Spark was the revolution. So most of the people are aware of Spark naming standard. I'm going to talk about it. What is the driver node and what is the worker node, and how the resource manager is going to handle your resources. All those things we're going to talk more in detail at the time of a Spark architecture. And Azure Synapse Analytics also follows the same kind of MPP architecture only. Okay, so when you go for data processing side, we have two different approaches. One is batch processing and streaming processing. So batch processing means you're taking from here to here, specific range. Let's say, for example, I wanted to process the data at 9 a.m. every day. In the night at 10 p.m. I wanted to process it 2 times, maybe it is. So one time you may have it. So some point of data you're taking it. So fixed what I can say, fixed time you're taking to process it. So that kind of processing, we can say it is a batch processing. But streaming processing is whenever the data is coming in, the data is going to be processed. So real-time data, we can say it is. So real-time processing projects are very less in the market, but batch processing, we're going to have a huge and huge. In my experience, I came across only batch processing. Okay, so the definition, you can see how often to run. Every 6 hours is going to be batch processing, or after 10K records. Okay, so once the 10K records are reached, then I wanted to do it, or every day, one time I wanted to run it, my data processing, then you can go for batch processing. So continuous processing or real-time processing, if you need, then you can go for streaming processing. Okay, so Hadoop is not having a streaming processing, but when you go for Spark, we have a Spark streaming also. Okay, Spark streaming we are having, and there are many streaming services are available. Kafka is having streaming processing. It's an open source. Apache Kafka it is, I guess. But I did not work with the streaming processing. If you want, you can just have an update with the streaming. So I've given a differences between batch processing and streaming processing. Like processing time, scheduled it is. Basically, if it is a batch processing, we're going to schedule it. But streaming processing is not going to be scheduled, because it is going to be whenever, like if you take a stock data, then we need to go for streaming only. And data handling, processing large data sets at one shot. Okay, so when you read it one time, you may have a more than 1 million or something like that. You're going to have it for batch, because if you are getting every day 1 million transaction on an average, then every day you're going to process 1 million records. But when you go for here, then you're going to process the data continuously. So use cases for ETL jobs, for reporting purpose. For this purpose, we're going to use the batch processing. And for fraud detection, stock price tracking, then we can go for streaming. So you can feel that there will be less number of projects with streaming data. And for tools, when you go for tools wise, then Apache Spark will support for batch processing, Hadoop supports for batch processing, ADF supports for batch processing. But when you go for streaming, we have a Apache Kafka, and Flink is there from the Apache, and Spark also providing the Spark streaming to process the real-time data. So this is about how we can process the data. As part of our sessions, we're going to see batch processing. So Microsoft Fabric also is there. Okay, so you may not get much more clarity here, but at the time of Fabric, we're going to see little more details. Everything that is there under one umbrella. They brought all together. Data Factory is there, data engineering services, data sciences services, data warehousing. So real-time intelligence, Power BI, additional workloads, all together they brought into one umbrella. So that is what it is, a one lake. Okay, so one lake we are going to have as part of our Microsoft Fabric. Okay, so one compute engine is going to take care about when you run a Spark job, Spark engine will be there. When you run a SQL engine. When you go for KQL for real-time data, then we have a KQL engine, and all these engines are going to talk to the same data store. Okay, so same data store are going to be used. So at the higher level, I wanted to say all together kept it in one place or one in single umbrella. Okay, so almost it is done. So data factory, yeah. So ETL and ELT, will see that in the Monday session. We are going to talk about it. What is ELT and ETL? So traditional is the ETL, and new is modern design is the ELT. So I can go through these differences. I will take you through little more details on tomorrow, because sorry, not tomorrow, on Monday. We are going to talk about data factory. We are going to start talking about this data factory. So data factory will be provided a solution for your big data. We can integrate other services also. We have a different services we can integrate with the data factory, and we can pull the data from the varieties of the data sources, and we'll see that more and more from Monday. So we are going to spend almost 1 month with Azure Data Factory only. So Microsoft Power BI is not in our boundary, in our bucket, but Microsoft Power BI will be used to provide the insights on top of the data, and this will be used by a reporting team. So components of the Power BI have just have a look on it. What components are there when you go for certification, that will be helpful. But this is not part of our training. So I have given some scenarios here. We just try to provide the solution for this, like is SAS, PAS, IaaS. I'm just saying here, these are all what we can say, test we can say, IaaS, PAS, and SAS. Deploy databases in virtual machine. So deploying virtual machine in deploying a database in virtual machine comes under which platform? Is that coming under IaaS, or is that coming under PaaS, or is that coming under SaaS? So that I'm just asking here. So here deploying a database in virtual machine means IaaS. So that is the answer for this. IaaS is Gmail comes under which service? It is going to be SaaS service. So just try from your side from this one and let me know. So you can get to know, like, the basic details of this. And I have given a test case, so just try to write your test. So what services it is, so that you can have an idea before going to the testing. You can go for this so that you can attempt for your DP 900. And after completion of this, I have given a dumps also. Go through the dumps and try for attempting your DP 900 certification. So tomorrow we don't have a session, as it is a first Saturday, and from next Monday we are going to talk about Azure Data Factory. So this is our major journey. We are going to spend up to 1 month here. Up to 1 month we are going to be with Databricks, with the Data Factory. And we have, after completion of that, we are going to spend the time with the Databricks. That is also going to be up to 1 month. We are going to be there. And in the same way, we have a Microsoft Fabric. Okay, so we have to adjust in all the places. So around 3 months, we are going to be there with all this entire training. Okay, so any question, guys, before stopping?
Sir, one doubt is that, sir, this Apache Spark, PySpark and Spark, all three are the same only, sir?
Same only, same only. Same only, slight thin line is there. What is the line will come across that.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Okay, then I'm stopping here. We'll see on Monday. We don't have a session on tomorrow. Thank you for joining.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.